Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
And I'm Chris Clements.
And we are excited to have Congressman John Shadegg back with us again.
Great to be here.
Arizona congressional royalty.
Yes. So this is great timing because
it is excellent timing.
Because Congress is an absolute shit show right now. And
Republicans continue to want to show they're the stupid
I don't know that you
party.
know anything about creating shit
Excellent
shows.
choice of words, I would say. Right, very precise. Got it. Happens to be completely true.
Yeah. Well, and look, I tell people all the time that I remember a time when being the creators of chaos in Congress was actually to do it to get real things done.
We did it.
And to do it for principle, on principled reasons.
Absolutely. We did a lot and we had fun at it. I talked to a member last night a member of Congress from Arizona who was telling me how much pressure the Arizona legislature is under right now and how intense it is. And I said, yeah, but you live that every day. And this particular member said, not so much. So I think I think it's been.
We do a lot of standing around waiting.
Well, we when we were there, we created chaos for sport.
Well, you did create chaos for sport, but my argument has always been you did it because you were principled in trying to advance the conservative cause. Because what was happening was that we had a Democrat president. Newt was speaker. Sometimes he wouldn't, he needed a little injection of spine. Even when Bush was president and Hastert was speaker, they definitely needed to be held in line on some things. But it seems that this day and age, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Matt Gaetz, this is all just performative for them. This is for them to get clicks on their social media
Clicks and
channels.
coin.
I actually think it is very different than when we were there. I brag about this. Nobody has fact-checked me yet. But I don't think we made lots of demands on leadership. And I actually explained to this member of Congress last night that we used to bring down rules until Missouri. Roy Blunt got elected chairman of the caucus, I guess, or whip, got elected as whip. Right. And he wouldn't let us bring down rules anymore without, all kinds of penalties. But I brag that we never made a demand that was impossible for leadership to accomplish. And I think that's the big distinction between the Freedom Caucus of today or the Trouble Causers of today, the group that chose to throw out the last speaker and is now apparently thinking about or on the verge of throwing out the current speaker. We never made a demand on our leaders that they couldn't meet if they believed they needed to. And quite frankly, most of the time they met our demands.
Right.
And so in that sense, it was different. I think when we got into government shutdowns, the trouble causers within the Republican conference, the rebels, as I had been, began making demands that leadership simply could not possibly achieve. Balance the budget and, oh, by the way, don't shut the government down.
Right.
Okay, we'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to put it, because here we have a situation where Johnson has a 1-vote majority until Saturday, and then he has a 0-vote majority,
right?
Because Gallagher's leaving, and a Democrat president and a Democrat Senate. Well, guess what? You only have 1/3, and so
you barely have that third.
No, you don't even have
that. So
that.
you're never going to get what you want. And what I can't figure out is how is it that we, when Langford was trying to negotiate an immigration and border package, and immediately the House was like, no, it's dead on arrival. They hadn't even seen language, whatever. But I was thinking to myself, if you believe that the border is an actual crisis, then anything is better than nothing.
That's right.
20% is better than nothing. You're not going to get 100%. So if you say, oh, if it's not 100%, it's 0. Well, that's not governing.
Well,
that's not actually.
And then Joe Biden is not going to reenact the executive orders that he rescinded.
Well, and I think
not going to happen.
I think Joe Biden is a huge factor here that people don't talk about. You pointed out that, what'd you say? The Congress is a
shit show.
There you go. I thought I'd let you say those words.
Yeah. When is it? Since when am I the guy that curses and you're not? I mean,
me curse? Come on. But the reality,
That was another time, Sean.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, nobody was around to hear it. You heard it. We were there. It was 3 a.m. In any event, Congress, I was going to say, is a shit show because the world is a shit show,
Yeah.
and the world is a shit show because of Biden. I mean, when the guy came in, the border was secure. He apparently can't remember that. The world was at peace. The economy was doing well. Minorities across the nation were experiencing prosperity they had never experienced. China was, kind of somewhere over there doing whatever it was doing. Russia was somnolent, if I'm using that word correctly. Right. And then suddenly Biden comes along and he completely blows foreign policy. He begins his administration with the debacle in Afghanistan and us watching people there clinging on to the structure, the landing gear of one of our planes to try to get out of the place. I mean, it has been a disaster, which makes you say, how can the race even be close? Right. And the economy has tanked. Somebody did a skit, I guess, on some liberal show, and he, in the last 24 hours, you guys probably will recall it, he opens a drawer. He says, well, we got problems going on right now. Just a minute. He pulls a drawer. He pulls out a what do they call it when you knock it with a bat? A pinata. Yeah, he pulls out a pinata of a donkey and he beats the, if you can use those words here, crap out of it.
We can use any words.
And then he says, well, let's talk about how we're doing.
Yeah. Well, pretty much.
Yeah, it sums it up. Tell me where he's doing well. I just kind of like to know.
Well, nowhere. I mean, I don't.
Well, you still have some defenders out there. Our good friend Simon Rosenberg. He's
Well,
out there defending Biden every step of the way. He's almost become a mouthpiece for the regime. It's unbelievable.
Well, of course there are defenders because all he does is buy votes. I can find him a defender. Go find a kid that he's now promising debt relief to, student debt relief to.
Right.
If you're willing to do anything to buy votes, you can get defenders.
And yet his pivot away from Israel.
Yep.
To the insurrectionists in Dearborn, Michigan, is baffling, absolutely baffling. Like that's going to win him Michigan. No, the UAW selling the souls of its workers.
Yeah,
and which predicated instant layoffs at most of the plants there is what's going to lose you Michigan. It's not going to be a bunch of anti-Semitic Palestinians living in Dearborn.
Well, it is a miscalculation, and it is, but we have, Trump was a great president in the sense of what was happening across the world, as you pointed out, Congressman Shadegg. He's not a great candidate because he's got a lot of issues.
Lots of issues.
So
and personality issues are most of what they are. Substantively, he did a great job, and you couldn't say during his administration that there was chaos around the world the way there is today.
Right.
No.
Right. Which is completely opposite of what everyone was trying to predict. Oh, we need to have Hillary, the stable one. What? And yet it was Trump who provided incredible stability across the world because there is and I think part of it was because foreign leaders didn't know what to expect. So they just kind of, they were a little bit on pins and needles. That's exactly where they should be.
That's exactly what Nixon's strategy was in Vietnam.
Right.
Keep them guessing. Don't let them know what you're going to do. The amazing thing about Biden is he literally stumbles from one catastrophe to another and is never held accountable for it because, well, he's this kind of likable old guy. And
rather than dawdling old fool.
Yeah, it's one or the other. And if he just did
I'll take the latter.
But the amount of problems we face around the world, and even the amount of problems we face in the United States, I think for the first, I'll pick a period of a year of tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people crossing our border, our southern border, every day happened, and nobody in America knew about it because only one network showed it.
Right.
No other network showed it no other network even mentioned it. And it went on and on and on. And you watched it and you went, wow, is this what he intends to do? Is this on purpose? And then you come to the conclusion it has to be on purpose.
Yes.
It's the only explanation.
You look at Mayorkas, so when Mayorkas they'd put footage on behind him with people crossing by the hundreds of thousands, and he'd say, the border's under control. Yeah. We have control of the border.
The border is totally secure.
Yeah. And it's like,
and he wonders why he got impeached.
What? So it is truly stunning to watch what an incredible job he's done. And it reminds you of the old, we used to tell this when I was running, of, you put a frog in warm water and start heating it, and it'll just sit there until it cooks. But if you drop it in hot water, it'll jump right out. Well, the American people have just watched Biden, and they go, I guess it's okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the intensity with which minorities are now embracing Trump. The bodega thing is awesome. But the bodega thing stacks on top of the McDonald's thing.
Yeah.
And if they just do that from now till Election Day, everybody's going to say, I can't vote against that guy.
Well,
the only thing I saw actually was Rich Lowry, I think, had an article in National Review last week. He said the only thing Trump needs to do between now and election is the Chick-fil-A McDonald's strategy. Just go to every Chick-fil-A, every McDonald's, every Burger King, every In-N-Out Burger, whatever you want to do.
Throw in
every
pizza,
bodega,
lots of Pizza Huts.
lots of pizza, and buy everybody fast food.
We can throw
and he'll win.
We can throw chicken. We haven't gone, we haven't done Kentucky Fried, or what's the one in the South?
Churches.
Or
Popeyes.
Yeah. That can be the campaign.
So what is your take? I mean, we're digressing a little bit, but this is an interesting way to go. What is your take on all the lawfare against Trump right now? Do you think it's helping him more so than hurting him? Because I think people see right through it.
I hope people see right through it.
Especially what's going on in New York right now.
Well, this case is absurd.
It's absurd.
This case is absurd.
This case is absolutely absurd, and hopefully that will come out in the course of the trial. But I think,
they're not televising the trial. Why aren't they televising the trial? Because they want to control the narrative.
Absolutely,
yeah. Through the mainstream media.
A lot of people, in my opinion, underestimate the American electorate, and in my studied view of the American electorate is underestimate them at your peril. Mm-hmm. And right now, are they paying attention? No. Some candidates call me and say, I want you to endorse me. I want you to endorse me now. And I say, so my endorsement isn't very important? And they go, no. I mean, it's really important. And I say, well, why would you announce it when nobody even knows there's an election coming right now?
Yeah.
They're busy getting Janie off to her baseball game and Billy off to his violin lesson.
Yes.
And they're paying attention to politics right now.
The only people who are paying attention to politics are crazy people like us.
Crazy people like us. And by the way, the people that are listening.
Right.
God bless you.
Yeah. The small minority, but
it's such a good point.
Because it's the indifference. It's the people who don't pay attention are the ones in close races who make the decisions that sway the election one way or the other. And so the timing is super important.
Yeah.
You want to
critical.
You want to top out on election month now. It used to be used to say
election day.
Top out on election day, but now with all the early voting,
top out during voting, while they're voting,
and that's a long ways off. And so there's a lot that's going to happen. What advice would you give to members of Congress who are not trying to take Johnson down on how to deal with this? Or is it just going to have to play itself out?
Interesting question, and I was actually thinking about it this morning because to me, and I guess I teased with you before we started, you want me to slander all the current members of Congress. I have to say that I am disappointed in many of them. I don't see much leadership, either at the top of the conference or anywhere down through the conference. The one thing that happened with the class of '94, of which I was a member, was that it was made up of, I think, very smart people, smarter than the average incumbent that was there, because we'd been out of power for 40 years. And the people who ran had spent years thinking about, well, this isn't right, and I could do better than that, and we need to change this and this. And for them, it was an intellectual and a philosophical devotion or effort. To me, you talk about it being a shit show. It is because they're not reflecting on the importance of what they're doing.
No, that's a great point.
I've thought about, I've actually toyed with writing a book. Yet another. I've got a dozen books in my mind.
I got a copy of your dad's book sent to me the other day.
There you go.
Yeah,
it's the best.
I've started editing it for you.
One we're supposed to rewrite. Yeah. He started rewriting it. In any event, that group of people thought deeply about what they did. I think this group of people doesn't give serious thought to their conduct. A part of it is, I don't think many of them went there to legislate. They went there to be a congressman. And if you go there to be a congressman, then what you want to do is raise money so you can stay in power and get tons and tons and tons of press. Right. So if you're out there in the Cannon Rotunda every night or 3 times a week being interviewed by some TV station, well, that's doing your job.
Yeah.
And not many people legislate thoughtfully. I think, for example, I am so livid, and this may offend some of your listeners, but I hope they'll think it through. I am so livid with the isolationist Republicans who say we have absolutely no stake or essentially no stake in Ukraine, and that it is a forever war. Well, it's a forever war because they themselves are making it a forever war. And make no mistake about it, Biden got us into that the same way Biden has gotten us into every other problem we have in his administration. He walked into it standing straight up. He essentially told Russia point blank, well, if you have a small invasion of Ukraine, that's fine with us.
Yeah.
That's an open invitation for whatever scale of invasion they want.
Well, the open invitation, as you said eloquently earlier, happened in the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan.
That was the open invitation to the world.
And, I think I was the first, at least in my own mind, and maybe that was the only place, opponent of never-ending wars. To me, Vietnam had one lesson and one lesson only, and that was, if it comes to war, there are only 2 options. Don't go at all, or go win as quickly as humanly possible and get out.
Yeah.
And I once heard President Bush, the second, come to our conference and say out loud to the conference, he didn't want to make the Vietnam War mistake. And I was sitting in the back of the conference and I was dead shocked. I thought, what? What do you mean you didn't want to make the Vietnam War mistake in the Middle East? And I said to myself, you did. And I actually jabbed the congressman next to me and said, what did he just say? And the guy said, well, he said he didn't want to make the Vietnam War mistake. And then I jabbed the congressman on the other side of me and said, what did he just say? And he said, well, he didn't want to make the Vietnam War mistake. So I listened then like, to quote Clinton, a laser beam. And Bush said, well, the Vietnam War mistake was having LBJ pick targets in the White House. And I thought, oh my God, where were you when the war was going on? The Vietnam mistake was going without a plan to get out.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we went to the Middle East and did it all over again. Exactly. We were still hanging out in Baghdad. How many years later? How long did it go on?
20.
20 years. Yeah. And we could have gotten out after 1 or 2.
Right.
Go in. If you have to go in, if you can avoid going in, don't. But don't assume that the only way they can get back at you is by coming in sailboats. The guys right now in the Congress, in my opinion, the Republicans in Congress who say we're not going to give a dime to the Ukrainians, number one, must be thinking that to themselves, well, if Russia takes Ukraine, then it'll launch a bunch of sailboats to come get us.
Right.
Russia doesn't have any ICBMs that can get here in a matter of seconds. They'll just have to put a bunch of sailboats in the water, right? Or maybe they'll be steamboats. I don't know. But it is absolutely insane. Reagan's instruction, which I thought even this generation of members of Congress would have understood, which is the best way to avoid war is to be prepared for war.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead they're sitting back and saying, well, and the other thing they ignore is history or even the background. How many of the Republican members of Congress right now who say we can't give, what's the number, $60 million?
60 billion.
$60 billion. We can't give that to Ukraine right now.
It's a rounding error.
It's a rounding error. Absolutely. But they say, no, we can't do that. We can't get ourselves involved in that war. Apparently, they've forgotten that we cajoled Ukraine into giving up all of its nuclear weapons when it left Russia.
Right.
They did not want to give them up, but we talked them into giving them up based on what? On a promise that said, because you've given up your nuclear weapons, if you are ever attacked, we, the United States, Britain, I think maybe France, all said, we will come and defend you. We are now.
That is a great point.
We're
totally reneging.
We're
on that.
not even.
That's a
we're
great
not
point.
even being asked to live up to that commitment by sending soldiers or U.S. airmen or U.S. Navy personnel, which is what our commitment was. If you are attacked by Russia after giving up your nuclear weapons to us, now that you've left Russia, we will come defend you. It wasn't we'll just send you the weapons. We will go and defend them. They're not asking us to send our soldiers. They're asking us to send ammunition. And it's, so America's word is meaningless.
Yeah. And these so-called Republicans in Congress who are saying no to Ukraine are absolutely doing Putin's bidding.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just astounding to me. They become Putin's puppets.
Not only Putin's bidding, but the bidding of Xi Jinping.
Yeah. Right.
Because he was sitting there saying, well, I'm not sure. I know I want Taiwan back, but I'm not sure if I want to pay the price. And now he says, yes, there isn't a price.
Yeah,
but
it's free. Yeah, it's free.
But going back to the initial point.
It's like building an island.
And I'm not being a contrarian on this issue, but it all goes back to Biden. It all goes back to the fact that Biden has never articulated what an end game is for Ukraine.
I have no idea.
He has never articulated a strategy for winning.
He's never articulated a strategy for anything.
And in the meantime, we saw hundreds of missiles sailing towards Israel, who's our strongest ally, other than the Brits. And what does he do? He tells Israel to stand down. When it was his $10 billion of relief that he sent over to Iran that funded those missiles.
Yep. Where in the world?
Feckless and weak. Feckless and weak.
Where in the world do we get the audacity to tell a nation that's under attack that it cannot defend itself? Say what?
Yeah.
If I were Netanyahu and that war cabinet, I would just stop listening to Blinken and the rest of them.
Well, the geography makes, I'll give them this much. The geography makes it incredibly difficult because it's deep enmities crammed into this tiny little area. But that doesn't change the basic rule. The basic rule is you have to be prepared to stop the other guys, and you have to keep your word. This reminds me. I know I told them
it's kind of like that. What did Reagan call it? Peace through strength.
That was it.
Imagine that you cannot articulate weakness or show weakness to your enemy and not make them think that if you attack them, they're not going to come back harder and faster and stronger at you.
So, quick story. I meet Shirley. She's a teacher. She says, we get talking about various things. We're not married. We're just dating. And I probe her with questions. And she says, John, when it comes to raising children, there are only two things that count. One, establish rules. Not a big deal. Two, you have to enforce the rules. and to me, that was like, what? What's she talking about? I had no idea. Then we started to raise our children and we enforced the rules. And what do you know? It works. I just read somewhere in the last week, there's somebody who's criticizing Biden and who says the guy sets, the guy lays down so many markers that the world is running out of red ink. So he says, well, we're going to draw a red line in the sand. And we go paint that sucker and use up a few billion gallons of red ink, red paint. And then he reneges an hour later. And oh, by the way, when he announces, we think that was a terrible thing for Iran to do to attack directly Israel, from their land to Israel's land. Skip over Jordan and launch an attack. That's absolutely terrible. Oh, by the way, we don't want a wider war. It's like saying, man, I am passionately against X. Could I have a little more X?
Right, exactly.
It's like, what?
It's absurd.
We don't want a wider war with Iran, who we've been funding for the last 3 years.
Well, and it's
who we've created our own problem.
This is a problem that goes back to Obama, and it's just a continuation of Obama's, vision on this, which is anti-American.
How many red lines
and,
did he
and
paint?
anti-Israel. It's actually anti-Israel and by default anti-American.
Yes.
But it's anti-Israel. And I think that the challenge that we have as Republicans is that we have too many Republicans who are falling into this trap of being anti-Ukraine and anti-Israel because they think it's America first, but what they fail to realize is that the true America first position is to be strong with our allies against the people who want us dead. The Islamofascists and the Russians.
When the people who want to kill you say the truth out loud, believe them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's all an anomaly. First of all, we got a war started by the Democrat Party because it was Biden and Democrats who said we got to go help Ukraine. But to the extent that Republicans in Congress are saying we're not going to fund another never-ending war, they are ignoring their own complicity. Because when Biden said we're going to help Ukraine, instead of immediately questioning why and learning why themselves, and then pressuring Biden and saying to Biden, okay, if, as you point out, we have a treaty obligation that we gave to Ukraine that we would help defend them if they gave up their nuclear weapons. And okay, we agree with you that if we allow a nuclear-powered or nuclear weaponized or nuclear weaponized Russia to take Ukraine, guess what? They're not going to stop. If we agree with all those things, we'll fund your war, but we won't fund a less than full-on, we're going to win effort.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they let him start it by saying out loud, well, I wouldn't be too upset if they started a little war.
Right.
You tell me what's a little war. I will tell you, just saying those words, in 1950, 52 to 58, was the Korea War going on in 1958?
Yeah.
So in 1950,
early 50s.
So was it 52
Early 50s, yeah.
Early 50s.
Yeah.
Before that, 52?
Yeah, like 50, 51, 52.
So Goldwater
53.
decides to run for the Senate in 1952. He runs against the the sitting majority leader of the United States Senate, Ernest McFarland, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And McFarland is what his counterpoint today is
Chuck Schumer.
Chuck Schumer. So this is home state guy deciding I'm going to knock off Chuck Schumer, right?
Right.
You kind of go, ooh, good luck with that one. In a state, the registration of was 8-1.
Right.
Against the guy that's going to knock off the sitting majority leader, right?
Just a solid Democrat state.
Rock solid Democrat state. McFarland stays in Washington, thinks this is just a nuisance race in Arizona, comes to Arizona once or twice during the whole campaign, but, and anybody, I wasn't there then, paying attention then, but he goes to Casa Grande and he calls the Korean War a cheap war.
Ooh.
And it was over. Goldwater gets elected to the United States Senate because Goldwater didn't let that go.
Yeah.
And so Biden years later says to Russia, well, if you start a little war, with or a small war with Ukraine, we might not feel obligated to get involved.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Just handed the keys to Putin. Just take it. Yeah.
And so my point is the Republicans who say we're not giving any more money should have been laying down the ground from day one. By God, if we're going in, we're going in with all fours, give them every weapon we think they need to win it and win it quickly. And they shocked us by how well they did in the first 2 years. And then, and so you got 2 years to win it, and then we're getting out.
Right.
And they could have won it in 2
Yes,
years.
absolutely.
Except you had Biden, and Biden doesn't believe, he didn't have the courage. He doesn't have the courage to do anything. He's deathly afraid of any country
Because
that has
Robert
nuclear
Gates
weapons.
was right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Robert Gates, triumphantly said that Joseph Robinette Biden has been wrong about every major foreign policy decision in the last 50 years.
Well, his own president,
Wrong.
when he was the vice president, after he was vice president, Barack Obama says, don't underestimate the ability for Joe to fuck it up.
Joe Biden to fuck it up.
I mean,
And we
it's
can say that on this show because we do it every once in a while.
and it's true.
It's
and
true.
On that,
I mean-
on that note,
And he's effed up that and
much
everything else he touches.
Yeah.
Unless you give them credit and say, look, they didn't F up the border. They decided we need millions of additional votes on the left, so we'll just let every foreigner who wants to, whether they're leave a prison outside the country or are already chanting outside the country death to America, which, oh, by the way, now Americans are chanting
Right.
in Michigan.
Downtown New York.
yeah.
Downtown
Right.
New York.
Yeah. Joe Biden's mess.
Yeah.
Well,
I hope that when people stop thinking about getting Janie to her softball game and Billy to his violin lesson, I hope they realize how disastrous this guy has been. And I think it's fascinating that the minority already has.
Yeah.
They picked up on it. They've been hurt worse. Minority Americans have been hurt worse by this guy than anybody. And the other thing is they're not mealy-mouthed. I think a lot of the Republicans who aren't enthusiastic about Trump are kind of wimpy. They don't, ooh, he's nasty. He might not cut his fingernails often enough because of the way he talks, So, but the minority say, no, I like guys like Trump who tell it just the way it is.
Yeah.
This is wrong. We're going to stop it.
Right. They like the straight shooting.
Yep.
They like the strong man.
Yep. That's right.
They like the strong man.
All right.
Not the weak, feckless, gutless, wimpy guy from Scranton.
Right. Congressman Shadegg, thank you again.
We could have gone
for
on
being
Hey, it's
here.
kind of fun.
much longer.
Yeah.
But
Oh my gosh, yeah, but we're definitely out of time.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to be somewhere. All right.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you so
everybody.
much, Congressman.
Hey, it's a
God
lot of
bless
fun.
you.
I enjoy it.
Take care.
Anytime.